Hi everyone, and welcome to video number 22 on warfare. We're still in the modern era. We're still looking at the nature of warfare, weapons, but this time it's part 2 of the video. Part 1 we looked at previously. We were looking at 20th century, 1900 to 1945. This one we're looking from 1945, end of the Second World War, right the way through to today. So let's have a look. This video is about mainly changes, but some continuity to do with warfare in that period. Let's start with the big change that I mentioned in the previous video, the development of the atom bomb. 1945, America dropped 2 bombs to end World War II on 2 Japanese cities. Check back if you need to do some more research on that previous video. But things began to change quite rapidly. 1945, only America possessed a nuclear bomb, the atom bomb. By 1949, the Soviet Union had joined them. They had successfully tested the atom bomb. Other countries then followed. China, Britain, and other countries. Nowadays, we think that there are about 8 countries have declared, and 1 is presumed to have it. So there are 9 countries with nuclear bombs. Things have changed. 9 countries, over 15,000 nuclear warheads. The world is under threat. But since 1945, no country has actually used their nuclear bombs against another country. Why might that be? Ladies and gentlemen, I introduce you to madness. Madness, they call it Madness. Great band, 1979, Madness. Now, what do I mean by madness? I mean this, M-A-D, MAD. Also stands for mutually assured destruction. In other words, country A has an atom bomb. Their enemy, country B, has an atom bomb. They do not like each other, but they won't use their atom bomb against each other. Why not? Because if country A uses its bomb on country B will use its atom bomb on country A, and both countries will be destroyed. Mutually assured destruction, MAD, has actually, in some ways, some people have argued, it's meant that atom bombs have not been used since 1945. In other words, these fantastically powerful weapons have resulted in stalemate. MAD. Now, what other changes have happened in warfare, particularly to do with weapons, in the final half of the 20th century and the first few years of the 21st century? We'll have a look at them in this video. But all the time, ladies and gentlemen, be thinking of the factors working behind them, mainly technology and science. They are the 2 key factors which keep on developing and changing the way that warfare is, carried out. Got there in the end. Sorry about that. Now, let's see if we can have a look at some of the changes. I've gone back to 1916, my Brodie helmet there. 1916, the British soldier, nicknamed Tommy Atkins, in the trenches at the Battle of the Somme. When the British soldier went over the top of the trenches, what weapons did he carry with him? Number 1, a Lee Enfield rifle, capable of firing about 15 bullets per minute. A bayonet attached to the end of the rifle. 2 grenades known as Mills bombs. Some wire cutters, a gas mask, empty sandbags. That was the equipment of the soldier in 1916. Very good for the time. The technology available at the time meant that was the best weapons that the soldier could carry. But we've had 100 years since then. 2016, 100 years later, a soldier going into battle in 2016, what would they carry? What changes have occurred? Well, body armour, a helmet often with night vision glasses to see at night, a radio, a grenade launcher, an assault rifle with telescopic sights, the machine gun range 1500 meters, firing 750 rounds per minute. Can you see that there has been a huge change between the soldier of World War I and today's soldier, ladies and gentlemen? The weapons that both soldiers would carry, utterly different. And why? One word: technology. So, the weapons for the individual soldier have changed. But what about other weapons? What else has changed? Well, let's start up in the air. Aerial support. Now then, quick question. What's wobbly and flies? Wobbly and flies? Don't know. What's wobbly and flies? A jellycopter! Terrible joke. I apologise for that. We're not talking about jellycopters, but we are talking about helicopters. Again, a new technological advance, and it's been able to change the style of warfare, giving support to the infantry. Now, just two examples. British helicopters, number one, the Merlin. It's magic. Sorry. The Merlin can carry up to 45, 50 fully armed troops and then drop them at various places. Mobility of warfare, support for the infantry. Or we have the Apache Helicopter with thermal imaging, able to fly at night, and with missiles which can again get involved and support the infantry. So helicopters are one big change. Remaining in the sky, of course, we now have stuff like stealth bombers. Very, very expensive, $2 billion. And what can they do? They can fly undetected by radar. We have the British Typhoon jet fighter flying at 1,300 miles per hour. Unbelievably fast, very, very high as well. So we can see that technology is beginning and has developed and changed aerial combat in the latter half of the 20th century and into the 21st. Tanks. Previous video I mentioned about tanks in World War I and in World War II. Well, they've continued to develop, ladies and gentlemen. The Challenger 2 now has fantastic protection, really impressive armour. It's also very quick and it's well armed. So tanks have continued to develop. Artillery, ICBMs. Do you know what that stands for? Intercontinental Ballistic Missile. In the exam, just put ICBM if you're asked about that. They can be fired from land, from ships, from submarines. Britain has the Trident submarine, and again they've got a huge range, so they could attack a very, very distant enemy. And the final change in this particular section, UAVs. What am I talking about? UAVs. Unmanned aerial vehicles. Still don't know what I'm on about? I know, I'm just droning on. They're drones, ladies and gentlemen. Okay? Now, drones can be used for a variety of strategies in warfare. Number one, surveillance. I'll talk about that in a minute. Getting information, dropping bombs. And of course, if the key thing here is they are unmanned. it's beginning to change the nature of warfare because there's no need for people to be involved. You're cutting down the risk of casualties, therefore. Now, I just mentioned surveillance. Okay, knowledge is power. If you know where the other army is and you know how many people they've got there and there and there, you have an advantage. Go back into history and people were always trying to get knowledge and surveillance about their enemy. Now, go back centuries and it was very, very basic. Literally try and go onto the top of a hill and have a look. Then other things came in. We get the development of telescopes. We get balloons. World War I, we had the aircraft. World War II, that continued. But then we get another huge change. After 1957, what happened? Great program called Star Trek. Space, the final frontier. Space comes into it, ladies and gentlemen, because after 1957 we have satellites in space, and this changed things, particularly to do with surveillance, gathering information about the enemy. Nowadays, all the major powers have military satellites orbiting the Earth. We think that there are over 2,000 military satellites. Oh, it's very, very crowded up there. It's no wonder they don't have any accidents. Well, I think maybe satellites need traffic lights. And if they're all up there, surely they'd have to pull into their version of the car park and pay in a parking meter. That's a terrible joke and I apologise. No more jokes. Let's get serious. Sorry about that. Now, the serious point is, of course, that these military satellites can be used to gain information. What about? Well, they can predict the weather. Think back to previous videos. In wintertime, hardly any fighting used to take place in the old days because of the weather. But if we can predict weather now, maybe that could be changed. So predicting weather would lead to different military actions. One job of satellites. Another one, maybe the most important, spotting, locating, targeting the troops, the number, the types of weapons, where the troops are moving to. A very important role for satellites. Photographs before and after an attack so that you can check how much damage has been done, whether the attack has been a success or a failure. And finally, satellites have been used to aid and develop and assist all forms of communication systems, whether it's just talking to the different armies dotted wherever they are, or whether it's actually helping to guide missiles. Satellites play a huge role in modern warfare. That is a key change. Precision bombing, guided by the satellites. We have what are called smart bombs today, 10 times more accurate than previously. Important if you want to cut down on the casualty rate of non-combatants. Try to aim just at the people who you want to hit. So satellites are vital and have played a huge role due to their technology, that key word again. And the final part of the video, ladies and gentlemen. And in a way, in some ways it's a change, but in some ways it's showing continuity. Now go back into history, and there have been unequal wars, a big country taking on a smaller country. I'll give you one example, 1899 to 1902, when Britain fought against people in South Africa called the Boers, and it was called the Boer War. Have a look if you wish to find out about that. But Britain was a massive, huge imperial power, possibly the dominant force on the planet at the turn of the 19th and into the 20th century. And it was taking on a small group. Well, surely Britain would win very, very easily. Or would they? Unequal wars, ladies and gentlemen. Now, it goes back to something I started the video with. the idea of atom bombs, mutually assured destruction, country A not attacking country B because they both got the atom bomb. So therefore, more recently, country A would attack a weaker country, a smaller country, a country that didn't possess the atom bomb, because they can't retaliate. So that has led to an increase in unequal wars. Well, what has that meant? The smaller country can't stand and fight because they'd be destroyed by the bigger army, the bigger, more powerful country. So how do they fight? They use what has been known as guerrilla tactics, hit and run tactics, where you attack but then you run away and blend in with the local civilian population. Here's some examples. To some extent, the Vietnam War, America versus Vietnam in the 60s and 70s. More recently, America and Britain and other countries fighting in Afghanistan and Iraq. Now, these smaller countries can't win a normal stand up and fight battle, so they use these guerrilla tactics. That has proved troublesome for the bigger power. They've got all the weapons, but they can't necessarily use them all. They've got all of these bombers and fighters, but they can't drop their bombs if their enemy is hiding amongst innocent civilians, the civilian population. Can you see what's happened here? All of their weapons can't necessarily be used. The smaller country has used tactics which has made the larger country a little bit uneasy. Go back to the Iraq or Afghanistan war, a development there, IEDs, where bombs are just placed by the roadside and then the soldiers come past and they are detonated. 63% of deaths in the Iraq war were caused by these IEDs, a very effective tactic by the smaller, less powerful force. So we can see that war has developed and changed due to this concept of unequal war. Now, I finished off there right at the end of the video mentioning about civilians, the civilian population. As we move to the next few videos, we'll look at the experience of war in the 20th century and include, obviously, the impact of war on civilians. So that's coming up soon. As ever, I hope it's been useful. I shall speak to you soon. All the best now.